All right. Good morning, everyone. Hope you are doing well on this Sunday. And this is Paint with Lovejoy. We are going to be doing a landscape painting again with a waterfall feature. And I am just doing the refresh to make sure everything is showing up for you guys at home. Looks like there's a little bit of a lag. And um, if you have any questions today, there we go, now it's working. If you have any questions today, please feel free to leave a comment in the chat and I will address it while we're painting today. So a little bit of what you're looking at here. We do have a nice kind of textured background and I do reuse my canvases so that way I just don't have tons of canvases all over my house. But if you want to reuse your canvas, there is a link in the description box below. And it'll be a little video that shows you how to either put white paint or gesso on top of an old painting, and then you can do a whole new painting on top of it. So it's a nice way for my beginner painters to be able to paint many, many times without kind of breaking the bank and buying a bunch of canvases. With that being said, if you are making a gift for somebody, I do recommend that you start with a fresh canvas, so that way it just looks that much nicer when your final painting is on there. So for today's painting, it is going to be a landscape waterfall. And it does seem like the landscape paintings are pretty popular. And we're going to just kind of break up the canvas into a couple of sections. We will be putting a horizon line across, doing our sky above. Our waterfall is going to hang out in the center, and then we will have like a little pond and then some trees hanging out. So awesome. All right, so what we're going to do first is going to create our horizon line. And I'm actually going to start with a light blue because we are going to put our sky in and our water, and then we're going to put our grass and our rocks, and we're going to kind of jump around the canvas as we're allowing some of our paint to dry so we can put some layers on top of it. So I am starting off with a really light blue, so I'm pulling some of that white aside. Tiny amount of blue goes a long way to start off and make that light shade of blue. And I do want you guys going pretty light. It's going to kind of be our base, and we'll put a few darker shades on there. I'm going to go a touch darker on mine just so it shows up on the video a little bit, bit more contrast for you guys at home. So, all right, and I see a few of you jumping on. Hi, Sonia. Hi, Anita. Thanks so much for making the time and hanging out with me every morning. I really, really appreciate it. Okay, so to put our horizon line on our canvas, we're not going to quite go fully halfway, but we're going, a little below center. I was trained not to ever put your line exactly in the center. So I'm painting on an 8x10 canvas. If you're painting on a larger canvas, just kind of adjust. But I usually start on the bottom left-hand corner, and we're going to go up about 4, maybe 5 inches, and then just place a little dot right there. And it's almost at the halfway mark. If you hit the halfway mark, totally okay. Then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Start at the bottom, go up about 4 or 5 inches, place a little line. If you need to do that a couple of times in the center, go right ahead, and then you're going to connect your dots all the way across. All right, we're going to lay off one other area so that way we can paint it both kind of at the same time with our light paint. So starting here, we're going to go down about, let's see, maybe about 2 inches and place another little line. And if it curves a little bit, totally okay. And then in a very abstract and non-direct way, you're going to continue that line. We're going to pull it across, and this is our water, our pond, because our waterfall is going to be right here. We'll have some land up here and some trees, and then a little bit of a sky. So again, looks kind of weird. We've got our horizon line in this weird box shape. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go up to our sky, and we're going to fill this with a light blue, and then we're going to jump down here, fill in the other areas, and give that top portion time to dry before we put our trees and our foliage on here. So I'm going back and I'm making a really light blue, closer to the color I want you guys using at home. But even with that being said, if you feel like switching up colors, please, by all means, change out colors. Use this video as a guide, but change it to what you might want for your painting. All right. So basically going to be filling up that whole space. And if you have to mix your shade of blue 2 or 3 times, don't stress about it being the exact same shade. We will be putting trees and foliage on top of this. So we're really just going to kind of see a small portion of this sky, and we might see a few of it in between the leaves on our tree. All right. Nice. And I like that you guys are all talking to each other too on the chat. Very cool. Developing a very nice community makes me really happy. All right. And if you are using student grade paint at home, I do recommend that you apply your paint a little bit thicker. It'll give you a little more workability, and it'll help to do a little bit of the blending. If you are using other materials, crayons, markers, colored pencils, awesome, awesome. Use what you have at home. You don't have to do these videos with paint. You can use other materials. All right, so just filling all that in with our light blue. And again, if you have to make that 2 or 3 times, totally okay. I'm just going to do in a few areas, a few darker sections, but not a whole lot. I do want to keep this as kind of a nice, calm little blue sky morning. So going just a little bit darker and just in a few other random areas, we're going to slap that color on there. And then with that light pressure, we're just going to blend that darker color into the lighter one. And if you need to, you can always go back to that light blue, throw it back on there, and it helps with a little bit of the blending. So with the wet on wet blending, it is a bit of a back and forth method, and it will blend a little bit differently based on the type of paint that you have, the elements outside. If you paint outside, your paint dries even faster. And if you paint inside, it usually dries a little bit slower. But the wet on wet blending is just kind of a nice way to get lost into the beginning part of your painting. All right, oh cool, and a few more jumping on. Hi Denise, hi Tammy. Excellent, excellent. All right, so we are just kind of doing kind of random, because keep in mind we are going to be putting a decent amount of foliage in this area and a little bit of foliage over on the other side. So we will be covering up certain aspects of this, so don't fall in love with it. Now we're going to come down and put our base water in here. This is our, I guess, pond that our waterfall would be coming down into. So same thing, and I'm going to go a little bit darker blue on this one, just so we have a nice difference between our sky and our water. So I'm going for about that middle blue that I slapped on there. And we're going to fill this space in. And oh, I forgot to mention, if you are on a stretched canvas, carry your color around the tops, the side, and the bottom. It just looks nice when you hang it on the wall, having that color wrap around the edge. And it's easier to do it while you have the color made compared to trying to color match at the end of your painting. All right, so our water, our pond down here has its nice base, and we're going to do the same thing that we did to the sky. We're going to go a little bit darker and add a few darker elements right on top of this wet paint. And like I said, this is called wet on wet blending. So I am going to put a little bit more towards the back, because we are imagining that the water is going to kind of fall down this way, so there would be a little bit of a shadow. And for kind of future planning for a painting, if we have a bit more of a darker space here, and then when we put the white caps of kind of the water spray, it's going to have more contrast on a darker color compared to a lighter color. So just things to kind of think about as you get more and more involved in your painting practice. All right, and then just kind of I'm blending that darker blue into the lighter one. It doesn't have to be anything amazing or perfect, because like I said, we're going to be putting some layers on top of this today. And if you're holding your breath or you're just watching, please take a big inhale, relax. It's a nice Sunday morning. Painting is an awesome way to spend your Sunday morning. So now I'm grabbing some more of that direct blue, the darker, and just in the few areas towards the back, just applying a little bit darker color on there, and then maybe a few other little random areas. It does not have to be perfect. And like I said, we're putting more paint on top of it, so we'll be changing it as this goes along. All right, so let's see. Yeah, if you have questions, like I said, just leave them in the chat and I'll lean over and look. And let's see. Anita's asking, if I made my paint too thick and already applied it to the canvas, can you add a bit of water direct to the canvas? Okay, good question. So it's kind of an odd balance with that. You could just add more water to your brush and then just start to spread it out. The balance is going to be you don't want too much water and you don't want too little of water. So start off with a small amount of water and spread that paint across. And then if you need to add more as needed. So kind of like mixing your colors. Start with a small amount and then see as you need more. If it gets very frustrating, you can always just basically scoop that paint off with your brush, put it back on your plate, and then move the remaining paint that you have on there. Okay, so from here, if you're taking your progress photos, this is a good place to take a progress photo just because it looks so odd. So we're going to put our dark ground in here, kind of our base. And again, this is where our waterfall is going to be. So we're going to put the dark color first, allow that to dry and go to other parts of the canvas, and then we can come back in with the blue and have our water overlap this darker space that's going to be behind it. All right, so let's see. I'm actually going to start with that burnt sienna, that reddish brown. We're going to go a little bit darker. And if you don't have the burnt sienna, a dark brown will work just as well. If you only have the light brown, you can do the same thing and we'll add a touch of black to it. So again, that reddish brown that I'm using, I'm adding just a little bit of black so it's a little bit darker, but it still looks brown. And we're going to fill this whole weird shape in, and then we're going to start building our other layers on here. So again, as you're applying your paint, try different brush strokes, try applying your paint thicker, try holding the brush sideways. But as you're laying on some of your base colors in any painting, it's a good place to warm up, and it's a good place to maybe try a different brush stroke that you may have been wanting to try. So half of art is really just going, well, what's this do? Well, let's try this. And then you decide if you like it or don't like it, and if you want to keep it or if you want to adjust it and change. But it's a lot like a scientific experiment. You go, what's this going to do if I mix this color and this color together? And then you do that and give it a try, and that's your little science experiment. And I do believe that the more that you can do art, the better it is for your science capabilities, your math capabilities. It's a good balance for the brain, which is why I enjoy sci-fi art so much and movies. It just takes the possibility of what could happen and what would it look like, and it takes artists to make that a reality for the public. All right, so looking kind of weird, but we are at the point where it's called our underpainting. Our base is filled in. We don't have any white space of our canvas. And again, go back and apply it a little thicker if you're seeing a bit more transparency in your paint. But again, we're going to be putting lots and lots of layers on top of this. And that is one of the nice things with acrylic paint. You can just put a layer on there, let it dry, and then add another layer and just keep building. Okay. All right, so I think, yep, that's already dry. And because I am using the repurposed, the re-gessoed canvases, when you do paint on those, it actually dries my paint out a lot quicker than a regular canvas or a fresh canvas. So keep that in mind as you maybe re-gesso your canvases for practice. So for me, because these are short little demos, the fact that this does make my paint dry a little faster is to the benefit, so I can move along and show you guys more. But at home, if you're painting, feel free to pause the video, let your paint dry, and then pick it back up where you need it while you're waiting for your paint to dry. Okay, so we're going to put kind of like a little mound here, a little hill, and then we're going to be doing some soft, light shadow effects, and we're going to kind of mimic the brush strokes that we did for yesterday's painting, this kind of just quick slapping it on there, but having a lot of fun. It seemed like everybody enjoyed that a lot yesterday. So I'm pulling the little bit of yellow aside, little bit of green, because like I said, I am going for more of a light, and I'm thinking kind of spring green here, but super light, and then I'll be building darker on top of this. But you are welcome to adjust to any shade that you like. All right, so let's see, starting at our horizon line, we're gonna start on the right-hand side and just hover our brush over maybe 6-7 inches, a little to the left of center, not quite center. And this is going to be one of our hills, our mound. Doesn't have to be anything perfect. And then we're going to kind of, again, just slap that paint on there. My background sky color is fully dry, so you do want your paint to be dry before you start adding your shades of green. And again, you can see that I'm mixing it kind of each time that I'm going there. Again, don't stress out about getting the exact same shade every time. And if your brown is still kind of wet, just be a little careful as you're coming up next to it. But if you get a little bit of that brown into the green, totally okay. Oh, like I just did right there. So it does kind of blend it a little bit. So if you do get a little bit of that brown in there, just kind of work with it. It becomes a happy accident then. Oh, cool. That's right, Sonia. Yeah, you're painting on old records, so it looks really neat. I like it. I liked how that sloth turned out. All right. So we've got our base on here, and we're going to slap some darker color. So again, grabbing that dark green, slap it on there, kind of thick, move it around. You can get a little more expressive with these brush strokes and just kind of have fun. And you will notice that your background, as it's wet, as you kind of slap this color into it, it starts to diffuse a little bit and change. Just have fun with that. You're training your eye really well right now to recognize different colors, to recognize shapes. You're getting comfortable with the pressure of your brush. Your brain's taking in a lot of information right now. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing with the yellow. Grab that, slap it on there. And the yellow and the lighter colors do get eaten up rather quickly in the darker colors. You don't have to move your brush nearly as much to kind of blend them in. And even like right here, you can see where that just quickly, that yellow got lost. So I'm going to grab a little bit more, slap it on there, and then just with light pressure, move it around. So I am getting you guys kind of comfortable with painting with a little bit thicker paint and getting your layers going. All right, so let's see, let's go a really light, more yellowish spring green. We've got stuff on the left-hand side of the canvas that we have to add. And this is just kind of a haze. If there's some parts where the blue shines through, totally okay. And then we're going to recreate that process above our hill. So again, just with that light pressure, totally okay if some of that blue is shining through, but we're going to be putting a few details on top of this. See, so like right there, I've got a little bit of that white shining through, or the blue background. And I am just keeping light pressure. It's almost like little wispies. So again, you're just getting comfortable with how you're holding the brush. Right now, you're kind of an abstract painter. If you are finding that you are shaky as your brush reaches the canvas, it means that you're holding your breath. So if you exhale as you touch the brush to the canvas, you're going to be a little less shaky. And we hold our breath when we are nervous, when we want to be really awesome or really perfect, and we just overthink the process too much. So in creativity, it's a really good outlet to kind of overcome those things, because every human does it, and even artists that have been painting their entire lives, they will still hold their breath on occasion. So it's something that we work on all the time. So don't beat yourself up if you are holding your breath. I'm just really proud of you and really glad you are painting right now. All right, and if a little bit of that color overlaps a little on your hill, totally okay. This one will be a bit kind of like yesterday's painting, a little more expressionist, a little more impressionist style, and just makes for a lot of fun. All right, so we're going to kind of do the same thing with a little bit darker green, and still keeping with that light pressure. Again, just kind of patches here, because you imagine that when you're walking in the forest, walking towards the waterfall, you're going to see different hazes, different sections of green, different places where the trees and the bushes overlap, or even different ways of how the light is changing it as it's filtering through the treetops. All right. So still looking kind of weird, but yes, Denise, those are little X marks. That's one of my favorite brush strokes. Let's see, just checking out other questions. We all overthink things, so again, just forgive yourself, move forward, and keep on painting. And I am speaking from experience. I overthink a lot of things. I do remember when I first started doing these demos a little over a month ago, I thought I had to have it planned out. I thought I needed a sample of something. I thought I needed so much more. And it's like, no, just get on there and paint. And you guys have been super supportive, and it has evolved really nicely. So just be kind to yourself. Don't overthink too much. Okay, so let's see. Our next step, while we're letting some of this dry, my brown is dry already, so you do want to make sure that's dry before you move on to this section. And we are going to move back to the brown, and we're going to start putting our tree trunks in here, and even some of our like leaves that might fall on the ground would be hanging out on this. So I'm going to go back to that mixture, that reddish brown, and I actually need to put more on the table or on the plate. There we go. All right, so mixing that burnt sienna, that reddish brown, with a little bit of black. And again, if it's a slightly lighter or darker shade than what you did right here, totally okay, because we will be putting some highlights on there. So if I tend to use the same brush, if this brush gets too much, feel free to move down to your small pointy brush, or if you're on a larger canvas, adjust for what you might need. But I'm going to use this brush, and instead of using the full width of it like this, I'm going to use it sideways to create these tree trunks. If this is too much for you, like I said, move down to that small pointy brush. So we're going to start here on the left-hand side, and we're imagining that we've got a few trees that are coming out of this area. We're going to have a few trees that overlap this hill, and then a few trees where the trunks will be up here. So again, you're just playing with the pressure. Light pressure is going to create a skinnier line. More pressure is going to create a fatter line. And I was at about medium pressure on that one. And you're imagining that these are the tree trunks. And then maybe I'm actually going to have two of them come off here. There we go. And if you can see through your canvas or through your paint, just apply your paint a little thicker. Let's see, we can do a little half one up here. And as you're watching the video, all I want you to do is observe the place of where I place it, and then to the best of your ability, just mimic that on your canvas. It does not have to be perfect, and if it happens to be a little bit different than what I do, totally okay. But like I said earlier, your brain is taking in a lot of information each time that you paint. And as this world gets more and more crazy and stressful, it really is up to you to find your creative outlets. And painting, if you enjoy it, is a really good outlet to have. All right, so this tree, I'm actually going to make it a little bit thicker. And if you happen to like flare out the base or anything, that's okay. We're going to put branches on this in a minute. But trees grow in many, many shapes, sizes, directions. So let's do some trees up here on the top of the hill. But yeah, like I was saying, the trees grow in many shapes and directions and sizes, so yours does not have to be perfect. And each tree has its own personality. So embrace the personality of the trees or the painting that you are doing today. Make a little bit more of that color. And let's see, a few more skinnier trees, and then we'll start putting some branches on there. And then, actually, I'm going to do one big one coming down from here. Let's do that one. I'm going to start at the top, and I'm going to use a decent amount of pressure because I want this one to be a little bit thicker, and it would be as if it comes down here. So I'm actually going to go ahead and grab that raw sienna while I'm doing that, so that way this tree trunk is going to stand out a little bit more. So you could do the same thing for you because it would be lighter as it comes forward in the view. And I did just go right over that burnt sienna, so they are mixing a little bit. So like I said, it does not have to be perfect. And I'm going to add a little more raw sienna to this so you can see where it's overlapping this area down here. Okay. And let's see, let's do another tree kind of coming from this area going up. And that one I'm going to just go ahead and use the direct raw sienna, so there is a little bit of a difference. And this time I'll try from the ground from the roots or the base going up. So it doesn't matter if you start at the top of your canvas or the bottom, and maybe try both. You might feel more comfortable with one direction compared to another. And you never know if that's what you like until you give it a try. All right, and this guy, his base will be right here where this guy was shooting off the edge of the canvas. And it is nice when you are doing a painting to have one of your elements go off the edge of the canvas, you know, and all these are going off the top of the canvas. It gives the viewer the inclination that there's so much more happening outside the canvas compared to what you have painted. Okay, so our bases are on there. I'm actually going to move down to the pointy brush while we do some of the branches coming off. And I will go back to that burnt sienna and black mixture. And again, if it's a little darker, a little bit lighter than your first round mix, that's okay. And again, with the pointy brush, you do want to kind of keep that light pressure. So if you need to rest your forearm against the edge of the table, or if you need to put your pinky out, put it on the table or a dry spot on your canvas, and you can use that as your pivot point. But try a few different ways as you are finding what is comfortable. And we will be putting some foliage over this, so they're going to blend into their forest a little bit more. And if you guys have any suggestions of what you want painted for future live demos, I think I've got the next 6 days on there, but I don't think I have anything else after that. So leave a comment of what you want me to paint in the future, and I will add that to the list. And again, you could have as many branches and trees hanging out here as you like. And later when we do the foliage, if you feel like taking one of the branches out, you can totally do that as well. Okay, so again, take your progress picture if you are taking photos. And I'm gonna go back up to that middle flat brush. And let's see, we're gonna start getting some different colors hanging out here. And we're gonna throw a few more colors on our tree trunks. So I'm gonna start with the raw sienna. We're gonna add a touch of yellow, so that way it's gonna warm it up. And again, just like we did some of the strokes yesterday and a few that we did in the background, we're just going to be slapping these colors on here. And then I'm going to go to another color and slap it next to it. So we'll be doing a little bit of blending. So, all right, let's see. Let's start here. And again, you're just kind of observing the place where I'm putting this. Mimic what I do. And I am doing those little X marks. So we're going to kind of slap it on there. And again, you can apply your paint a little bit thicker on this aspect if you want. Again, you're just getting good practice. Right, and let's see, now I'm actually going to grab a little bit of that direct yellow, a few little highlights in there, slap it right on top, and I'm not pushing really hard. I'm keeping kind of that yellow a little bit bulkier, a little bit thicker. So I'm not doing as much of the blending as we were doing in the background. And let's see, I think let's get the ground first and then we'll start moving into a few of the trees too. All right. And while we've got that going, I'm going to go back and we're going to get darker shadow right in here. So I'm going to go back to the black and that burnt sienna. All right, let's get some of these shadows on there. And actually, as I do that, let's put a few of them on there. And then I think I will actually be using the direct black on here. We're going to go a little more bold with some of our shadow contrast. Because I know it's probably hard to tell at home where I place that. So the brown and black mixture, we got a little bit here behind the tree, a little bit in front, and then a little bit around the base of the tree here. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into that black. So that way our shadows are going to have a bit more bold contrast. And I am applying it to the back. I'm going to go right next to the edge, the perimeter of this tree, And by putting this black on here and even having that lighter raw sienna next to it, it's going to be pretty cool how much that black pushes back, and then right here it's starting to make that tree trunk pop forward. So I just kind of put that line there and then wipe the brush off, and now I'm going to just make those little X marks to diffuse that black away from that base of that tree trunk and carrying it all the way down towards that bottom. So in painting, this is part of that magical illusion that I talk about a lot. Because this is a flat surface, we are magicians, so we have to create this illusion. So when we put a dark space next to a light space, that's what kind of gives that illusion. And the more that you paint, the more that becomes a little bit more comfortable to recognize and to apply. So just keep observing how you are learning, what you're doing, and how it looks, so those progress pictures are really important. All right, so let's see, let's grab a little bit more of that black. We're gonna have some more shadows happening. Let's see, okay, so a few brush strokes. Yes, I'm doing, or a few questions. I am doing the X marks brush strokes. And I am painting flat. My camera is up, just because it's harder to frame on an easel. And I think I did a few of the beginning demos that way. And it kind of distorted it a little bit. And I would rather you guys focus on the painting compared to being able to have me in the frame and the painting and the talking, so, and I don't necessarily always want to be on camera. So this is much more convenient for me. All right, oh, and we got a few suggestions. Mandarin duck. Oh, those are very colorful. I will add that to the list. Good suggestion. All right, so with this highlight, or with this black, we're going to start moving into a few of these trees. And we're going to kind of put the black on the left-hand side of the tree trunk. I'm actually going to come back and we'll put a little bit more yellow right there. But the left-hand side of the tree trunk, I'm just making these little X marks going down. We're going to do this to all the trees. And then we'll go back and just kind of, with that stabbing method, just kind of soften it a little bit. And maybe the skinnier trees, that little portion, you don't have to do it on. But if you get it at least on the bulk portion of the trees, this is starting to give us volume and our depth. All right, so I'm actually going to wipe that brush off. And I'm going to go back, and with that, that stabbing method will work. And kind of blend that into my brown, as my brown is still a little bit wet. If you need to, if your brown is already dry, you can grab that raw sienna, even on top of the darker, and do that little diffusing, that stabbing method, by adding the extra paint onto it. And by doing that, it helps give a little bit of a highlight on the right-hand side and the shadows on the left-hand side. All right. Oh, and a baby Yoda. Good suggestion. Okay, excellent, excellent. He was very cute as he took over the internet. Okay, and I'm actually going to stand up and look at this through the screen. Okay, and that's the same way as me looking at it from a distance. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to do one more thing on our tree. We're going to go a little bit lighter. So I'm going to take that raw sienna and the yellow mixture again. And we put the shadow on the left-hand side. We're going to put this highlight on the right-hand side. And again, if you need to, move down to that small pointy brush if it makes it a little bit easier. And whichever blending method that you found helpful, the stabbing method or the long stroke, whichever one is working for you. And it may be one of those things that it works one way on one section of a tree and you have to do another method on another section. That's okay too. And for your highlight, it doesn't have to be all of them, but I would say definitely for sure the front trees. All right, these look kind of funky. Look better. We're going to go back and put some foliage on there. And we still have to do our waterfall. Okay, and if you have a little section like this, like I do, I'm just going to go back with that raw sienna, smooth it into the black, and just kind of reshape that perimeter. So on your painting, if you have anything that you need to go back and adjust, and I don't go back and adjust it, feel free to do what you need to do for yours. Okay. All right, so let's actually get that waterfall in there. Let's change directions. Sometimes it is nice to do something different. So you're going to clean that brush off really good. I am going to stick with this one. If you need to use the pointy brush, go right ahead. And as we do this one, we're imagining that our waterfall is kind of coming down right here. I am going to hold the brush sideways and imagine that each brush stroke is like, you know, a flow of water. So I'm going to be moving my brush in the direction of the water. And I do have it kind of curved this way, and then as it comes down, I'm twirling it a little bit in my fingers to kind of create this motion. And we're going to bring it to where it just kind of lands right here, and then we'll start adding more on top of it. So let's start with kind of a medium blue, and then we can go in with some lighters. And you will notice there's going to be a few places that I don't fully cover it up and I allow some of the brown to show through. I'm going to imagine that if you are looking at a waterfall, whoops, hit the wrong thing. If you are looking at a waterfall, sometimes you can see through the water and you can see what's behind it. So that's why we're creating that illusion. So again, I touched the wrong color, so I have to start over. So going for that kind of medium blue, start with your white and add your blue. All right, so not bad. And then again, I'm keeping those bristles kind of flat. And then we're going to be adding our waterfall from this edge here. And there could even be a point where you just go straight down. We're just kind of getting the base, so I'm going to show you the perimeter of where we're at. It's kind of, this is about the section for our waterfall, so it looks kind of funky right now, so totally okay to take your picture while it looks weird. And then again, I'm keeping just that light pressure. I'm going to make a lighter color in a moment. The lighter color will give a bit more contrast, so adding more white to make a light blue. And remember to breathe, don't hold your breath. And remember that most of our paintings kind of come together in the last 10%. So don't judge your painting halfway through. Try not to judge it ever, but I know we're humans, so some of that's a little unavoidable. All right, so as I get kind of towards the top, I am keeping with these just a little bit shorter brush strokes just to kind of give a nice border here. And then I'll get into the longer brush strokes. And let's see, let's actually go with just some pure light white, light blues, closer to the pure white. All right. And while we've got this lighter blue on there, we're going to be imagining that as this water is hitting, this waterfall is hitting into this pond area, it's creating some turbulence on the flatter part of the water. So here we're going to be doing those little dabs, little dash marks. And again, you're imagining that the surface of the water has so much going on that it's just kind of creating these almost Van Gogh, Monet-like texture brush strokes. All right, and then I'm going to wipe that brush off, and here I'm going to do a few with the pointy brush just for comparison. And same with both, you're going to work on your pressure. And as I work with the pointy brush, I'm actually going to grab that direct blue, light pressure. And so I'm trying to go for a little bit skinnier lines here. And it is really cool that when you see the light blue, the almost white blue next to the dark blue, how it starts to give a little bit more of that depth. And that's again going back to what we talked about over here, having a light color next to a dark color. And I am going to go towards the bottom, like where this water is hitting, the waterfall is hitting the pond. We're going to go a little bit darker with these little vertical lines, and then we'll put the spray, the pure white foamy spray of the water on top of this. So again, giving that contrast. And then down here in our pond, we're going to go back to where these were vertical lines. We're going back to more horizontal, imagining movement in the water as all this force is happening from the waterfall. And again, remember to get out of your chair, look at your painting from that distance, and then go back and assess as needed. Okay. So we're going to give that a little time to dry, so that way when we put the pure white on there, it'll be a little bit more bold and we won't mix it into it. And let's see, let's go back up to the foliage. We're going to start getting some of the foliage that's going to overlap those tree trunks. So clean that brush out. I'm going back to that middle-sized brush. And back to the yellow and green mixture. And here we're going to be doing those quick, fat, thick little brush strokes on it. And again, imagining that we're in this nice lush forest. And we are putting a lighter color on top of a darker color. So you do want to apply this part of the paint a little bit thicker so it compensates for the darker color underneath it. Awesome. And I actually just looking over to see any more questions. Sometimes I forget about that. Yeah, I like the blue on there. It worked well. And glad you enjoy watching. And then hopefully you will paint afterwards. And I had a student email me the other day. I think she was a 6th grader. And was asking, she felt bad about copying other people's artwork. And she wanted to develop her own style. So I kind of explained to her that it's okay to copy other people's artwork, especially in the beginning. And the more that you practice, the more that you do this, your own style, your own voice will start to show itself. So I was also telling her that when you're learning something, you generally need to hear it about 3 times. Because the first time that you hear it, it's brand new information and your brain's still digesting it. The second time you hear it, you're like, okay, kind of making sense. And then the third time, and hopefully after a little bit of an physical application, the third time that you hear it, you're like, okay, this is what I need to do. So when you watch this video and don't paint along, and then maybe you paint along on the second one, that's just helping your learning curve. So it's actually a good habit to kind of get into. So good job. All right, so now I'm actually going to grab that direct green. We're going to do the same thing, just getting some darker colors in here. And I'm kind of just using that full width of my brush to make these little marks. And again, if you're inclined to put it in a place that I don't, go right ahead and do that. And I think I said it earlier, most paintings, most things in life kind of come together in the last 10%. And by doing these, it really just kind of shapes it more, brings it to life. Okay, and I actually want to go for a darker green. So I'm going to take the green and the blue mixture. And if you're kind of like I am, to where you end up losing and going through your real estate of your plate quite a bit, and if you are on a plate, feel free to use the rim. Or you can even use a palette paper or even a piece of plastic and then clean that plate off when you're done painting and then use it again. All right, so same thing with that blue and green combo. And it's actually not as dark as I want it to be, so I'm going to go in with just straight blue. Yeah, I like that better. I personally like high contrast, so I like the difference in the colors. If you don't like this blue, stick with that blue and green mixture, just because that's what you like, so do that. If you want to make this more of a fall scene, instead of the shades of green, you could do all of this with your yellow, yellow-orange, red, red-orange. You could use the colors that we used in yesterday's demo for the walk through the rain. All right. And oh, let's get some, imagine that we've got some shadow here on our hill. Nice. And here, I do like having that darker next to the tree trunk. Let's go a few back here. And I think we're gonna add a few in our ground here. So I'm gonna go back to that green and imagine that we have maybe some leaves that hung out down here, maybe some here, and that's gonna diffuse this area because I'm not liking that bright yellow as much as I did earlier. All right, so now I'm just gonna grab that direct green, same thing. There we go, that's diffusing it. And right here where I have that yellow, I am using a little bit more pressure just so that way it mixes with that yellow and diffuses just a touch. Oops, green. And if you do what I just did, you grab the wrong color, that's okay. Go back and you can adjust. And again, kind of like yesterday's painting, this was very impressionistic. So it is pretty cool that we don't need a whole lot of details for our brain to know what we're looking at. So kind of keep that in mind as you're painting, especially if you're starting to overthink a lot of stuff. Keep it simple. It is amazing how much our brain fills in the details of what we're looking at, even though we're not receiving all the information. And that's why the Impressionist painters were so awesome. The Van Gogh, Monet, just big swatches of color, and they were trying to capture light. Oh, I've moved on to the blue. Sorry. I got a little carried away talking and forgot my next step that I moved on to. All right. Very cute. Okay, so I'm going to clean the brush. We still have to go to our pure white right here and get that kind of spray foam of the waterfall happening and some highlights. And like I said, you do want to clean your brush really good so you don't contaminate your white. Okay, and I'm looking at it on the phone really quick. Not bad. The white's going to make it pop, so definitely take your progress photo. And just like we did all these other marks, we're going to do the same thing. And it is really nice just to literally slap your brush on the canvas and to even paint kind of what we would consider impasto style when you're throwing it on there really thick. But true impasto style would be even way thicker than this. All right. All right, and just looking at comments real quick. Yes, so a wet palette. They sell them. Let's see. Okay, yeah, the wet palette for weeks. Sorry, I was reading like 3 things at the same time. You could actually take a Tupperware container and put your palette in that, and then a halfway moist sponge, you don't want it dripping wet, and put that in the container, and that will be enough moisture to keep your palette wet, especially if you're working on a painting that takes a couple of days. So, all right, so here again, we're just kind of dabbing this on here, and really, really thick. So grab more paint every couple of little dabs. And you usually have a little bit of spray, so kind of keeping that light pressure. I do want it a little more opaque and concentrated kind of in that center spot. And then let's see, we've got a few little daubs here as it moves along. And again, these are more daubs on a horizontal manner. And then here I'm going back to kind of that perpendicular, trying to keep those little dots, imagining you're thinking of that spray. And then kind of flatten that brush or go to the small pointy brush. And again, everywhere you put the white, that's where you're imagining that the light is hitting first. So that is generally the lightest area. And again, if you look back at that picture before we added the white, it is amazing how much that white pops forward and changes and pops the color. All right, and I think we're gonna do a few highlights on the trees, and then that should bring us to the conclusion. And I went way over on this one, 50 minutes. All right. Got a little carried away with that, but that's okay. All right, so I'm gonna grab a little bit of that yellow and just a touch of the raw sienna, just so it's not so bright yellow. And I'm gonna go back because I want this highlight on the side of the trees a little bit brighter. So using that light pressure, I'm holding the middle brush sideways, or you can use the small pointy brush. And again, right-hand side of the tree. Sorry if I said the wrong thing a minute ago. I am dyslexic. Probably on purpose. All right, so again, just makes them pop a little bit more. And since this tree is a little bit more important, a little more forward, I'm going to grab some of that direct yellow, give it a little bit more of a bold contrast. And then I'm going to look in the viewfinder real quick. Nice, nice. And if you are inclined in just a few little spaces, maybe some little yellow leaves in there. My paint's still kind of wet. There we go. All right, not bad. Awesome, Jen. Thanks for letting me know about the wet palette. Nice. Ooh, Northern Lights. Charlene, I think I said your name right. I apologize if I said it incorrectly, but yeah, good suggestion. Northern Lights. And I'm assuming a T-Rex dinosaur demo. Is that what you mean? Or Trex is something else? So please clarify on that. And let's see, Anita talking about that wet on wet palette box. Literally, just take a Tupperware container. You can put your palette, whether it's on here or on a piece of palette paper, and then take a sponge, a little moisture on it, and put that sponge in with it, and then close the top of that Tupperware container. So you can make your own wet palette container. You don't have to buy one from the art store. And you should be able to YouTube that. I'm sure there's other people that have made some videos or demonstrations on it. But yeah, don't break the bank. Save that money for something else. All right, cool. So I will put the Northern Lights, the duck, and if you clarify on the Trex demo, I will add that to it as well. But thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. Thanks for hanging out for this demo going even longer than my other ones. And thanks for just showing up and gifting me with your time. Please feel free to check out the channel, all the other videos, check out my online school, Paint with Lovejoy. And like I said, suggestions on what we will paint next, and we will keep this going. So I hope everybody has a fabulous Sunday, and I will see you tomorrow. Cheers.